This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. As a return to our conversation with the former Brazilian president, the current presidential candidate, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Mr. President, I want to ask you about what's happened in Honduras, with the Organization of American States saying that the election there of the incumbent President Hernandez was deeply flawed, with the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, going to Honduras. Clearly, the ambassador there, the U.S. representative there, deeply involved in what has taken place with the swearing in of the president before a correction of the elections. Your thoughts on what's happened in Honduras, the U.S. involvement there, and also the U.S. attitude towards, the U.S. actions towards Venezuela, putting certain Venezuelan leaders on a list of those banned from entering the United States and taking other punitive measures against Maduro, President Maduro.
Amy, é bastante visível a interferência norte-americana
quite visible that the United States is interfering in the countries of Central America. It's not just today that there's U.S. interference. In many countries of Central America, the U.S. ambassador behaves as though they were elected by the far right in the countries of our dear Central America. What I deeply regret is that the United States has not learned to live democratically with the countries of Central America and with the countries of Latin America. In January of 2003, I had been president of the Republic for less than 1 month, and there was already a conflict underway between the United States and Venezuela. And I was in Ecuador, participating in the inauguration of the president of Ecuador when I met with Chavez. And I proposed the creation of a group of friends of Venezuela so as to be able to guarantee democracy in Venezuela. I told the United States that they should participate in the group. Colin Powell participated in the group, and I also got Spain involved, and Aznar participated in the group. Why? Because Spain had been the first country to recognize the coup, and the United States was accused of being involved in the coup. And I put Brazil and Argentina there, and I think France as well.
E nós encontramos jeito de fazer com que a Venezuela tivesse tempo de paz e tivesse
eleição. And we were able to give Venezuela a time of peace, be able to hold elections. And something like that should happen today. Self-determination of the peoples is a sacred matter.
É direito dos Estados Unidos tomarem a decisão que bem entender a respeito dos Estados Unidos.
Right of the United States. The United States has right to decide matters pertaining to the United States. That is called sovereignty. And it is up to Venezuela to make the decision within the sovereignty of Venezuela.
Fazer com que o presidente Bush se reunisse com o presidente Chavez.
I several times did what I could to get President Bush to meet with President Chavez.
Na primeira reunião que o presidente Obama foi a Trinidad e Tobago, logo no primeiro ano da posse dele.
When President Obama was recently in power, he went to Trinidad and Tobago, and then we had a meeting with him and with Chavez, trying to create the conditions for the United States to have a more peaceful relationship with Venezuela. But it seems to me that it's not possible. There's a certain irrationality at the U.S. State Department that doesn't want to negotiate peace in Venezuela. And But we need to understand that if Central America grows, it's going to improve the economic situation generally.
Risco em qualquer lugar do mundo. Por isso eu lamento.
No one wants to see democracy at risk anywhere in the world, and that is why I regret that there's not understanding on the part of the United States with respect to Venezuela.
The U.S. CIA, U.S. government, is well known to have been involved in the 1964 coup in Brazil. Do you see any evidence of that, both in the ouster of President Dilma Rousseff and also your own case? Do you see any evidence of foreign involvement, particularly the U.S.?
Olha, levou quase 40 anos para ficar provado que...
Well, it took almost 40 years to prove that the United States indeed did participate in the 1964 coup.
Embora não seja defensor da teoria da conspiração.
Now, even though I am not a defender of conspiracy theories, I am convinced,
A gente nos Estados Unidos que não aceita o protagonismo do Brasil
people
na
in the
política
United
externa.
States, some don't accept Brazil playing such a proactive role in foreign policy.
Há interesses extraordinários na nossa Petrobras.
There are extraordinary interests in our Petrobras,
Efetivamente na influência do
and
Brasil na América
there
Latina e
is
na América do
interest
Sul.
in Brazil's influence in Latin America and in South America.
Há interesses que não dê certo, sabe, o funcionamento dos BRICS e a criação
are
do
interests
Banco dos BRICS.
That not wanting to necessarily see the bank of the BRICS countries go forward.
Santo dia, a relação do Ministério Público brasileiro e do juiz Moro com o Ministério Público americano.
There is the Brazilian press always talks about the close relationship between the Office of Attorney General in Brazil and the Department of Justice in the United States around Petrobras issues.
E nós estamos tentando investigar.
And we are trying to investigate. Brazilian legislators go to the U.S. Congress. They talk with U.S. congresspersons.
E nós apenas queremos continuar trabalhando para que o Brasil seja país soberano.
And all we want is to continue working so that Brazil will be a sovereign country,
que saiba utilizar
a country that knows how to use its tremendous potential for development to benefit the people of Brazil. I ask myself every day, who would be interested in trying to destroy Petrobras? Who would be interested in destroying Brazil's engineering industry?
A maior empresa
who would be interested in destroying the largest company in protein in the world here in Brazil? Who is interested in fracking in Brazil?
Mr. President, Monday marks the 15th anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Iraq. You oppose that invasion. Your thoughts today, with the U.S. continuing in its presence in both Iraq as well as in Afghanistan?
Amy, eu lamento profundamente porque no dia 10 de dezembro de 2002...
Amy, I am so sorry that on December 10th, 2002, I spoke with President Bush at the White House. And I told him that Iraq did not have chemical weapons because the head of the international agency was a Brazilian, Ambassador Bustani.
The
President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Great Britain told the world a lie, saying that there were chemical weapons in Iraq.
And
Saddam Hussein was lying to the world, pretending that he had them. When Saddam Hussein could have saved his country from the U.S. invasion by asking for international presence to inspect So two lies.
A do governo americano dizendo que tinha armas
The lie by the U.S. government saying there's chemical weapons, and the lie by Saddam Hussein pretending that he had them. Well, these have led to the destruction of a country without resolving the problem of terrorism in the world. I think it was a great shame. It was a shame, and so many years have gone by, and to this day, no one has been able to show anything of chemical weapons in Iraq.
Me parece que a única arma química que tem no Iraque era o próprio Saddam Hussein.
It seems to me that the only chemical weapons were just him pretending that there were, and then terrorism goes on.
President Lula, what is your assessment of President Donald Trump?
Olha, eu não tenho avaliação. Eu acho muito.
I don't have an assessment. I think it's very unusual that there's a president of the republic in the most powerful country of the world who governs the country by Twitter.
Eu acho muito interessante isso.
I find that very interesting.
Mas de qualquer forma, eu tenho que respeitar porque ele foi eleito pelo povo
americano. But in any event, I have to respect him because he was elected by the people of the United States. And if he was elected by the people of the United States, then he is going to serve his term as he wishes because the people of the United States gave him the authority to do so.
Então, eu não posso ficar julgando jeito de governar do presidente Trump. É jeito de...
cannot be sitting in judgment of how Trump governs. He governs in his way, and we'll see how it goes.
Your thoughts on President Trump calling Africa, Haiti, and other countries, well, he called Africa a country, S-hole countries?
Olha, eu acho que uma pessoa que se comporta dessa maneira,
I think that
país irmão,
if a person behaves that way in discussing relations with sister countries, then I don't think a person would really be qualified to be president of the country, even if in the United States.
É preciso tratar os países mais pobres que ainda não tiveram chance de progredir, de crescer economicamente.
Countries that have no chance of growing economically must be treated with great respect.
Eu vou te dizer uma coisa.
Amy, let me tell you one thing.
Se os países ricos,
if the rich countries, especially the United States, who have already spent more than $14 trillion to resolve the 2008 financial crisis with the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, instead of having used part of that money to help the countries of Africa to develop, well, had they done so, certainly Africa would be growing more, creating more jobs, strengthening democracy, and improving the lives of the people.
Na primeira reunião que nós tivemos do G20 em Londres,
the first meeting we had of the G20 in London, there we suggested that the rich countries should make investments in the poor countries
novas regiões industrializadas no mundo,
so as to create new industrialized regions in the world and new consumers in the world. Unfortunately, the rich countries are to turn to protectionism once again, and took a long time to resolve the crisis of 2008.
I wanted to read for you from the Merco Press. It says, a controversial visit and meeting of two branches of government, the Brazilian government, was reported in the Brazilian media. And in fact, last Saturday afternoon, President Michel Temer made a visit to the head of the Federal Supreme Tribunal, Carmen Lucia, at her residence, and was not conducted as part of the president's official schedule. I believe they were seen hugging. The visit took place 5 days after Supreme Tribunal Justice Luis Roberto Barroso allowed police to investigate Temer's financial records, the first time in the history of Brazilian Republic that an acting president has had his financial records opened by judicial order. You know, this was happening at about the same time that reports emerged that the U.S. Special Counsel, Robert Mueller, is looking into Trump family finances. But I wanted to ask you about this because it's this Supreme Court in Brazil that will also be determining your fate. Is that right, President Lula?
Olha, primeiro eu acho que o presidente Temer poderia se
Look, first, I think that President Temer can meet with the Justice, Carmen Lúcia,
na Suprema Corte ou na sala dele no Palácio do Planalto.
either at her office at the Supreme Court or at his office in the presidency. But they apparently had a secret meeting.
Segundo, aqui no Brasil, nós precisamos restabelecer as funções das instituições.
Amy, here in Brazil, we need to reestablish the functions of the institutions. Here in Brazil,
aqui no Brasil, a política está judicializada.
Politics is becoming channeled into the courts, and the courts are becoming politicized.
E é preciso que as instituições voltem à normalidade.
And each institution needs to go back to normalcy. The judiciary, through the Supreme Court, is a guarantor of the Constitution. An executive branch executes, carries out, and the legislative branch legislates. If we were to once again have a harmonious and respectful relationship, then we can have Brazil go back to normalcy. I, too. Well, very abnormal things have happened. There are judges talking on television every day. There's a process of disrespecting institutions in Brazil. Part of the judiciary is on strike. They want a housing allowance of almost 4,600 reals. And these people earn 30,000 reals per month, so they don't need a housing allowance, like the Brazilian population who have no home. Those people need housing assistance.
Eu tenho convicção, Amy, tenho certeza.
So I have the conviction, Amy, I am certain that it is possible to reestablish harmony in Brazil. I'm certain that it is possible to go back to a climate like we had in 2010, 2009, with everyone living harmoniously, people talking among one another, and everybody living democratically in diversity.
President Lula, you could be arrested at any point. What will you do?
Eu não posso ser detido a qualquer momento. Eu não posso ser detido a qualquer momento.
I cannot be arrested at any moment.
Ser detido a qualquer momento.
This thing about any moment is
dos meus adversários, dos meus inimigos.
A desire on the part of my adversaries and my enemies. I can only be arrested if someone proves that I have committed a crime.
Eu tenho certeza, Amy.
I'm certain, Amy,
Que eu estou falando com você,
as I speak with you right now,
do que os meus acusadores.
I have a perfect peace of mind as compared to those who are leveling accusations against me.
Dos inocentes.
I have the peace of mind of the innocent.
Tranquilidade dos inocentes.
You can rest assured that I have the peace of mind of those who are innocent, and those who are bringing accusations against me know that they're doing so on the basis of a lie, and therefore I don't think that they are able to place their head on their pillow at night and sleep with the tranquility that I sleep with every day.
Even if you continue to say you're innocent, a court has ruled that you are guilty and face, nearly 10 years in jail. So even if you disagree with both the conviction and the appeal being denied, that has taken place. Would you resist arrest? Would you resist being jailed?
Não, eu trabalho com a hipótese de que haverá justiça.
I'm working based on the hypothesis that there will be justice before having to make such a decision. I'm convinced because...
Amy, a única coisa que eu estou exigindo nesse momento.
The only thing that I'm looking out for at this time is for them to judge my trial on the merits. The Supreme Court and the Appellate Court cannot let stand an untruth against the truth.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, president of Brazil from 2003 to 2010. Brazil, the sixth most populous country in the world. Lula is now running again for president. He is the current frontrunner, unless the courts stop him and send him to jail. Special thanks to Charlie Roberts. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Renee Feltz, Dina Guzder, Nermeen Sheikh, Carla Wills, Laura Gottesdiener, Sam Alcoff. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.